Fair use and content disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by the host do not necessarily reflect that of the Psychological Association of the Philippines and its management. Furthermore, the views and opinions expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect that of the host, the show, and the organization. Fair use is the copyright regulation that allows the limited use of copyrighted materials without acquiring permission from the right holders for comment and educational purposes. Views, articles, and images on this episode may contain copyrighted material which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner.
This is being broadcasted to the Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group's social media platforms, when available. If you have any questions for our guests, simply comment on this video and we will try to accommodate all your inquiries. Note that after this broadcast, we may no longer be able to answer your questions. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Live from the Philippines, Dr. Reyes and Professor Monique Muyargas, Chairperson and Co-Chairperson of the Teaching Psychology SIG.
Yay! Good afternoon. Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday. Hey, kamusta kayong lahat? Kamusta, madam?
Kamusta?
At boga, may pa-blazer.
Yeah. Kasi very special yung ating guest for today. Ano ba yan? Parang nahihirapan naman yung aking tenga. Ang laki-laki kasi. Okay? Ayan. So maraming salamat sa ating mga viewers who are joining us today, this Monday afternoon. Hindi tayo masyadong nagma-Monday afternoon, kapag hindi tayo masyadong nagsiset ng Monday kasi lahat tayo pagod. But because this is a very special webisode, kailangan gawin natin Monday. Joke lang. So, ayun. So, good afternoon kay Tess Bustamante. Hello po sa inyo. Also from Rack General. Wow! Hindi ko alam ibig sabihin nun. Good afternoon kay Precious Percy. O sige, maging tongue twister tayo. From La Union, hello. DMMSU La Union. Maraming salamat. Kay Carlos, Yupanto. Hello sa inyo. Good afternoon, everyone. So, maraming salamat for joining us this afternoon. Syempre, meron din tayo from we're live, being streamed on our Facebook page at the Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group page. We also have, we're also being streamed at our YouTube channel. Check nyo dyan sa baba, makikita ninyo kung saan yung aming, ano matawag doon? Channel. Ayun. So, hello din tayo ulit. Good afternoon. Macario Abella is now watching from, o baka magkamali.
Kalikawang National High School, Dingle, Iloilo. Hello!
Ayun. So, hello. Magandang hapon. Uy, ang dami mo ngayon from Iloilo, ha?
Nakita ko.
Parang local celebrity ka yata dyan sa Iloilo. Sabi ko sa'yo, meron. Sabi ni Niwan, yes, it's starting already. Yes, it has already started. So, good afternoon. Ayan, maayong hapon. Good afternoon po sa inyong lahat. Again, we just wanted to remind everyone, yung ating Dati kasi siyang Vice President, so feeling ko,
Yes. Hello, Nel.
IRO, yan. Doc Nel Limbadan from Ateneo de Davao. Ayan, maraming salamat. Hello po sa inyo. Also from Angeles City, from Bacolod. Uy, from LU, alam mo, dapat dyan kami pupunta nitong summer, pero
Oh.
anyway, cannot be. Carry 1 plus 3. Okay, so, ang mga, we would just like to remind everyone again that we are delayed for around 20 seconds kapag pag tayo ay nagsistream. So, just be very patient. Sa inyo, hindi nyo mararamdaman, pero sa amin, nafe-feel namin na may delay ng 20 seconds. Oo. From Pagadian City, hello. Hello din from Marilao, Bulacan. Uy, nasa na yung ating mga international subscribers.
International subscribers and viewers.
Hello, yes. Oo, meron tayo from
Vanji!
Hello. Yes, and from Las Piñas as well. So yon. So again, we are not giving out certificates for our webisodes. Again, these are just an opportunity, a channel for everyone to think about, reflect on what they can do. These are tips that are shared by our guests. So they are not experts. Baka isipin ninyo, experts sila. At yun din yung kinakatakot nila kasi baka mamaya sabihin daw ng viewers, hindi naman sila experts in teaching. Everyone is going through the same process.
Yes.
No? Yun. Wala na akong masabi.
It's nice to learn from each other, di ba? And it's nice that our viewers also comment their experiences, no? So we can contribute to all of our learning experiences para prepare tayo this coming semester.
That's correct. At if ever you will not be able to catch this webisode live, then you can watch it na lang after. It's going to be replayed naman, both again on our Facebook page and as well as in our YouTube channel. Oy, yung ating chairperson ng LGBT. Uy, yes, natahinto kami, Madam Bea. Alam mo kung bakit? Kasi wala na kami masyadong kalaban sa airtime ngayon. Wala na kami masyadong kalaban sa airtime ngayon.
Well, congratulations on your presentation sa Preach 2020. Yes.
Miss Bea, baka pwede mong i-comment kung saan nila pwedeng mapanood. Or kung may replay ba yon, baka pwede nilang i-check out din yun. Miss Beatrice Torre is our chairperson of the LGBT Psychology SIG, the sister psychology of the teaching psychology SIG. Yan. So, hello from Cagayan de Oro City. Ayan na, golden friendship. Okay, very good. At least
yan. Alam natin.
Kasi last time, parang hulaan, di natin alam kung parang napag-anuhan tuloy tayo, hindi natin alam yung geography natin. But anyway, so yon. So dahil special tong afternoon na to, siguro Monique, ikaw na magpakilala sa ating special guest for this afternoon.
Okay. So, tawag nito, para ma-prepare tayo, I would like to introduce our special guest, very, very special guest. It's very close to the SIG, to the teaching SIG. He finished his bachelor's degree in psychology at Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila. Huwag na natin sabihin kung anong year. And his master's and doctorate degrees in clinical psychology at the UST Graduate School, and currently a full-time professor of the UST Psychology Department. He was once affiliated with the psychology programs of Letran Manila and FEU. First batch PRC licensed psychologist and a Psychological Association of the Philippines certified specialist in clinical and assessment psychology. He has been an academic clinician and practicing psychologist since 2003. Currently a PAP board member and the PAP Vice President. He has been actively involved in the PAP since 1990 as junior affiliate, associate member, and now a regular member. O, pinagdaanan lahat, di ba?
Oo, iba din.
Iba din. He is also a lifetime member of the Philippine Mental Health Association Incorporated. His research interest and advocacy involves suicidology, LGBT psychology, positive psychology, and children with special needs. He is also the program and evaluation consultant and incorporator of Partners in Child Development and Progress Incorporated, a volunteer psychologist of Ang Komunidad para sa Ikauunlad ng Tao Incorporated. Apart from his, and an advocate member of Buhay Movement. Apart from his psychological endeavors, he is also involved in theater with Teatro Tomasino and a yoga practitioner at Urban Ashram, Manila. Interesting. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Mark Eric Reyes of PAP. Hello.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Kinakabahan talaga ako. Ako special kung special.
Oo, special our busy presidente.
Yes.
Our very own.
Utang na kasi, malaki ng utang ko sa teaching SID. Wala. Kaya talagang, yes, nung sinabi, okay, go.
Yes.
Sa schedule. Thank you for the invitation and thank you na accommodate yung Monday. Start of the week. Para ma-clear out lang yung schedule. So thank you for accommodating me on a Monday.
No, thank you for accommodating us.
Yeah.
I mean, you're very, very busy. Alam mo naman, from the mothership of
Yeah.
It has landed.
Correct. So,
ninervyos din ako. Nandiyan si Ma'am Banchi, nandiyan si Ma'am Nel, tapos nandiyan rin si Bea. Parang andito yung stress ko, yung stress level.
Yes. At marami kang tagahanga. Kasi sabi ni from UST Manila, we are very excited po sa speaker today. Ganon. Oo, may ganon.
Naku po. Okay.
Nasobrahan yata siya ng dinagdagan pa niya. Sir Mark. Oo, ayan. So, look in daw. Okay, from Christian, Sir Mark, sabi niya, good day, Sir Mark. Christine Tagle. Good day, Sir Mark. I miss your lectures po. Ayan. Kasi medyo natatakpan na si Sir Mark. So, ayan. So, ayan. Then, move natin. Direct paki-change natin yung yung layout. Ganyan para hindi na
Ayan.
Busy presidente. Ayun. So, again, thank you for coming over to the show. Kala mo na, meron talaga tayong show. Hindi. Well, thank you for gracing our webisode. Isa to sa mga tawag dito, most requested.
Yeah.
Oo, kasi again, aside from being a board exam subject, medyo tricky din siyang part on how we would be able to do this. So, siguro, Monique has some questions while I prepare lang some of your slides.
Sige.
Oo, chikahan muna kayo.
Chikahan muna tayo, Sir Mark.
Relax yung atmosphere, parang parang very talk show, yeah.
Oprah level. Ayan. You get a car.
Dapat Ellen, di ba? Di ba dapat Ellen? Ellen and Oprah. Okay, Ellen and Oprah. Okay.
Sir Mark, tanong naman. What do you think is very unique about abnormal psychology as a course to be taught? No? Kasi not especially sa mga baguhan nating teachers, what makes it what do you have to be or what do you have to do to make this course work effectively?
Okay. Siguro first and foremost, dapat yung interest nandun. Okay. I always would say that it's an acquired taste. It's an acquired taste. Not everybody probably would enjoy teaching RPsy because of the technicalities.
Yeah. At saka lengthy, ang haba.
Yeah, lengthy. Ang hirap paano mo ipapasok sa formats, di ba? Yung lahat ng topic. So that's one. It's an acquired taste in a sense that not everybody is really inclined on the clinical aspect, di ba? At saka yung isa then there seems to be a misnomer na, ay, pag ABSI naman, ano lang, pag-usapan lang natin mga baliw. Ganyan. Isa lang naman yung hulma nila, ika nga, di ba? So, isa rin yon. So, parang ang akala is it's that simple, but it's actually a very complex course to teach. So, siguro, kaya lang ako ngayon na nadalian ako nung nag-umpisa ako magturo. When I started teaching ABSI 1998, o yung buko na yung edad. Okay, I started teaching it in Letran in 1998. Okay, but probably I had an easier time teaching it because I'm practically into it. Diba?
Oh, okay.
I'm odd and I'm eccentric myself, so bordering yata ako into some abnormal traits. So nandun yung interest ko. But my challenge then was how would I simplify? Kasi yung kagustuhan mo ituro lahat, na minsan nagbababad ka tuloy to a certain topic or subtopic, na eventually wala ka ng oras, parang ganon. Or when I started teaching it, ang dami kong mga disorders na gustong isama, pag-usapan, parang ganon. So very lengthy yung course content, lalo na pagdating sa disorders, na hindi mo mapagkasya. Tapos doon ka na nakukumahog na, paano ko tatapusin yung syllabus ko, di ba? Na magpa-finals na, ganon. So yun. So yun yung parang pinaka-challenge when I started teaching. So I do hope yun yung ma-share ko ngayon. Sabi ko nga, I was thinking, I wouldn't want to use the word best practices siguro. Effective practices siguro.
Effective,
ito yung naging effective sa akin. And of course, sana yung ma-share ko. You could have your own take. Yun din, ang dapat ma-establish natin na meron kang sariling estilo. Meron ka rin sariling attack sa kung paano mo maituturo. Yun.
Yes, sir. So ano ba, Sir Mark, is it the more recent that we have to use yung bagong DSM? Just for everyone's information.
Okay.
Ano yung technically ginagamit officially?
Okay. That's a very good question, no? Okay. I grew up using the DSM-3R, meaning when I was in college, nabuo ang edad, no? That was DSM-3R. Then when I started teaching, it was the DSM-4TR, diba? When I started teaching 1998, DSM-4TR. So yun yung gamay na gamay ko. And then I think everybody, especially those who have been seasoned teaching ABSI already, medyo na-rock yung world natin noong 2010. 2010, 2011. When finally, after several years, diba, the longest was DSM-4TR eh.
Yes.
Dumating yung DSM-5. So, just to give you a background, when I was in Letran, yung textbook namin din, ang tinuturo ko, was the Pocket Handbook of Clinical Psychiatry. Okay, yun yung ginagamit naming libro at that time. Okay, kasi yun yung namana ko from when I was taking up advanced psychopathology in grad school. So dinala ko nung nagtuturo ako para I find it simpler yung Pocket Handbook of Clinical Psychiatry. So yun yung textbook. But when I went to UST na to teach ABSI, walang textbook. Ang ginagamit ni Dr. De Guzman at that time. Ang ginagamit namin was the DSM-4TR Pocket Handbook mismo. Yun yung main reference. So everything was handouts. Tapos yung diagnostic criteria yung ginagamit. And then ito na, noong 2011 nga, biglang, magbabago. Ano yung gagamitin? Tapos biglang board exams. Anong gagamitin sa board exams? Is it 4TR? Is it 5? At that time, I was very, very strong in saying, hindi dapat 5 kasi bago pa lang siya. 2013 pa lang ilalabas. So, lahat ng i-google natin, puro changes from 4TR to 5, di ba? Yun yung mangyayari. Plus, walang cases pa tayo na makikita kasi lahat ng cases natin was using the DSM-4TR and the multi-axial pa of that time.
Yes.
So, sabi ko, paano yun? Paano na ngayon? Okay, tapos biglang nag-board nga, di ba? Nagkaroon na ng boards, di ba? So, when I took over na from Dr. De Guzman handling ABSI, sabi ko, ay teka, that's when I had a light bulb moment. Bakit ba natin sinasamba ang DSM? Meron naman palang iba pa, which is the ICD-10. Diba? The ICD actually. Sabi ko, teka, DSM, bumibili natin, tapos ICD. And then there are countries that are not using pala the DSM.
Yeah.
So when I took over, nag-textbook na.
Oh, okay.
Nag-textbook na. As in, textbook kasi nandun na yung masakop lahat eh. Kasi ang DSM, wala naman causality, di ba? Wala naman yung therapy. As in, diagnostic criteria lang yan. So, samantalang yung textbook, nandun lahat. From the cause, signs and symptoms, tapos therapy, di ba? Treatment.
Yes.
So, doon na pumasok slowly. Nag-transition, tapos syempre lahat naman ng books natin are all foreign made, US. So, nandun naman din yung DSM-5. Diagnostic criteria. So, doon na yung sagot na ngayon, today, May, di ba? May 2013 it started. So, 7 years na ang DSM-5. Di ba? Pero, ang orientation ko na ngayon sa mga students is to give them an option. So, I discuss as well the diagnostic criteria and the ICD.
Oh,
so, hindi na ako exclusive. hindi na exclusive sa DSM, 'di ba? Namangka na ako sa dalawang diagnostic criteria. So both na, I refer to both the DSM and the ICD para para mas what you call, they have an option. They have an option we look at. Yun.
Okay, so that's a good tip for our teachers this coming semester. Ayan, Doc Ver, ready na po ba ang slides ni... Yan, okay.
Ayan.
So, take it away, Sir Eric.
Okay, sige. So, thank you, Monique, and thank you, Ver. Okay, so, again, this is my class in RPsy. When I say my class, it's my take on how I have been teaching RPsy since 1998 na. So I find this effective for me. So I hope after this you'll have some takeaway points. And then, although I was challenged talaga when it was mentioned na virtually teach, kasi I myself has just started teaching, no? So sabi ko, paano? Ano yung share ko, di ba? But fortunately, ngayon, I'm teaching a special term for RPsy, virtual. Okay, so although I have 8 students, so I started teaching, although inabot ako rin ng half-breed ng virtual kasi offered ang RPsy sa amin ng second term, inabot ng ECQ. Prelims namin was face-to-face, tapos yung finals period, nag-shift na to remote learning.
Yeah.
Pero at that time, syempre, talagang challenge. So, ngayon, yung masishare ko, hopefully, yung ginagamit ko, okay, na I think effective naman. And then, I would like everybody to have the mindset that I would like to teach RPsy with the notion that we will eventually go back to class. Okay? So, kaya yung mga virtual strategies, I placed it at the end so that ang mindset natin, whether ituturo mo naman to face-to-face or virtual, ano yung mga basics, okay? So, kaya yung first part ko is really on just teaching RPsy. Wala muna on wala muna whether it's virtual or not. Okay? So, next slide please. Okay? So, of course, I'd like us to set an objective, okay? Or we have to have set objectives when we teach RPsy. Now, in my years of teaching, medyo na-tweak na rin or nabago na rin to. Okay? In a sense that when I started teaching RPsy, I was really very technical. Technical in a sense na ang mindset ko ay lahat to magiging clinical psychologist, magiging clinician, di ba? So, nandun ako on the technicalities. Okay? But along the way, sabi ko, hindi naman pala lahat. Okay? Although, yes, this is a subject, but of course, di ba, board subject rin to ng RPsy, di ba? Ng RPsy, di ba?
Yes.
Talaga yung practice talaga. So, as psychometricians, hindi naman sila magda-diagnose. So, paano ko siya pasisimplehin or paano ko matatouch base? So, if you read the set objectives, this is generally my objectives that encompasses even those who will not pursue clinical psychology as an area of specialization. So, at the end of the term, first and foremost, I'd like everybody in my class to appreciate that you don't have a mental disorder. You should have that appreciation that you have a sound and healthy psychological functioning. You don't need to have one to fit in. Ika nga, di ba? So, dapat kung wala kang extreme anxiety, wala kang feelings of depression, ay, di butterfly hug yan sa'yo. Okay yan. Okay, so I'd like at the end of the term, they get to appreciate that I have sound mental health. And of course, until now, we have a lot of myths pa. So my set objective is at the end of the term, students already have debunked the myths and misconceptions that they have. Okay? And could psychoeducate people that they talk to on a laymanized level or a community level na mali yung paniniwala natin about mental illness or mental disorder. Okay? And of course, let us develop some compassionate understanding for those who are experiencing mental health issues. Okay? Kasi may stigma pa rin, di ba? So if you will look at the set objectives, nandun ako sa general concept of being a human being and appreciating your own mental health and understanding people. So para kahit saan mo dalhin, industry, sa educational setup, nandun, meron kang set of skills na dala. Lalo na ngayon, di ba, pumapasok na rin yung mental health in the workplace.
Yes.
So, yun yung unang set objectives ko talaga. So, at the back of my mind, ang palaging ang nasa isip ko, kahit hindi nila ma-absorb yung technicalities, hindi sila makapag-diagnose, di ba? Maintindihan lang nila yung sarili nila, at maintindihan nila yung mga taong may pinagdadaan ng psychological disorders. Okay? So ito yung parang non-technical objective. And of course, next, since this is a board subject, at the end of the term, I'm expecting that students should at least be able to describe, explain, predict, and control behaviors that we consider strange or unusual. So pansin nyo, hindi ko ginamit yung abnormal. Kasi debatable din nga, which is abnormal or not. Diba? So medyo general yung strange or unusual. Now, if you look at the set objectives, yung technicality, yung describe, explain, predict, and control, yun yung gusto kong yan ang tina-target ko for every disorder. Okay? In a sense that you'll be able to describe what depression is. In your own terms, or your own idea of what, di ba? You be able to describe it, even non-technical. Ano ba yung depression? Paano ba siya naiiba sa sadness? Diba? So you should be able to describe the behavior muna. Diba? And then explain, usually, kaya yung description, yun yung set of diagnostic criteria. Doon ko tina-target. Yung explain, nandun yung causality. Bakit? Bakit may mga taong nagkakaroon ng mental disorder? So you should be able to explain now the dynamics, the etiology, bakit nagkakaroon ng bipolar disorder ang isang tao, bakit sa pamilya nagkakaroon ng personality disorder. So you should be able to explain it, di ba? Again, ang target ko, laymanized. Not too technical kasi hindi naman lahat ng kausap natin palagi, di ba? Nandun sa framework natin of the clinical framework. Then predict, so that there's preventive measures. So alam mo na, like for example, kung may kaibigan ka na may depression or ikaw may pinagdadaanan, mape-predict mo na ano yung magti-trigger sa'yo. Okay? So you could already predict the possibility of you at a higher risk of developing certain mental disorders. At yung control, natatouch ako a bit on the treatment. How will we be able to control it? How will we be able to address the symptoms? So yung control is giving different intervention strategies. Okay, that will address. So kaya ito yung pag titignan nyo, very technical. Describe, explain, predict, and control. Okay. So next slide. Okay. Of course, we need strong foundation courses. RPsy should have strong foundation courses. Okay. Now, these courses are the courses that are the foundations in UST. So, recommended lang naman yan. So, hindi ko alam yung iba kung may offer to or nai-offer to. Okay? Since UST actually follows the biopsychosocial model, okay, and most of the disorders, most of the psychological disorders really is brain-based.
Yeah.
Kaya dapat may strong foundation. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, Monique, na medyo, acquired taste. Dahil hindi
Oo.
lahat, di ba?
Yes.
Follows on the biological perspective. Oo. Like ako, di ba kasi, old school. Nung panahon na when I was taking my BS, nasa strong foundation the psychology, on the functional, di ba? Pero ngayon, we understand that most are brain-based.
Yes.
Okay, central nervous system. So, strong foundation on neuroanatomy and biopsych, okay, because areas of the brain, functioning of the central nervous system, parts of the brain, okay, usually are implicated in certain disorders. Biopsych is where it comes on the biochemical approach, diba? So the neurotransmitters, kanya, and it would help us also find out ano ba yung tina-target ng mga medications. Although hindi naman tayo psychiatrist, pero kahit papaano alam natin ano yung mga maaring i-target when they take the meds. So the neurotransmitters. So of course, wala naman tayong endocrinology, pero yan. Part naman din is to have a good background on the endocrine system, because the hormones actually, especially if you heard of the HPA axis, inaapektuhan talaga. So, and then of course, in other schools, sa UST kasi, pinaghiwalay namin ang TOL tsaka TOP. Okay. Pero I know in other schools, embedded yung learning paradigm sa TOP. Okay, so strong foundations as well for TOP and TOL. Why? Because we know that certain behaviors that we consider strange or abnormal could be learned and therefore could be unlearned. So maaring papasok yung mga na-reinforce ba ito, di ba? Is it part of cognitive ba to, di ba? Kasi nga, alam natin, may mga cognitive belief systems could affect also the way that we think. And of course, yan, very popular yung TOP. Functional, di ba? Okay, lahat yung natapos lang na ituro ni Sir John ng TOP, di ba? Parang after reading all of the theories, parang lahat tayo anxious, no? Kasi lahat sila anxiety-based, di ba? Mula kay Freud down, talagang lahat anxiety. So yon. And then kasi when I also teach TOP, theories of personality, ang breakdown of every theory as well is, did a particular theory offer a psychopathology? So ang ginagamit ko kasi when I teach TOP, I use Sir Von and Pervin's framework, okay, on how to teach. So you have your structure, your psychodynamics, you have your growth and development, you have your psychopathology, and then you have your research and change. So yun, sa TOP, natatouch na din. Okay, like when we discuss certain theories that may lead to borderline personality, yan. Lalo na yung kay Klein, di ba, na splitting. Okay, yung splitting ni Klein, ang mga borderline personality, splitting yan. Diba? So, and of course, magagamit natin when we discuss PD, personality disorders. Okay? And of course, psychological assessment should be a good foundation. Okay? Later on, you will see in my course plan, meron kasing assessment and diagnosis na part. Ayan. So when you look at my course plan, ito yung again, my course plan actually changed, no, from the time that I started teaching it in Letran down to UST. So this is my current course plan. Okay, I marked it as non-negotiable in a sense that ito kasi yung magbe-benefit whether you will take up clinical psychology or not sa akin. Okay? Ito yung kumbaga parang dapat dito pa lang meron na tayong general idea. Okay? So ito yung sa akin, non-negotiable na ma-discuss natin. Okay? So yan yung 5 units siya pero ito yung first 4 units more on the laying of the foundation. So makikita nyo dyan. Okay? Next slide. Okay. So when I discuss unit 1, ito yung overview. Okay, so this is where I set the tone, okay, of differentiating what is normal and what is abnormal, di ba? Diyan. So diyan pwedeng hingin sa mga estudyante, ano yung paniwala, ano ba, what is abnormal psychology, di ba? So here is where we have to debunk myths, okay, and offer facts. Yan. So ito yung parang pinaka-intro. Ito yung first talagang setting the tone. You notice I don't discuss history anymore. Wala na.
Okay.
Panon, di ba, may historical perspective pa, Diyos ko po, hindi ko na yun dinidiscuss, pero readings.
So okay lang yun po. Okay lang na alisin.
Kasi ano lang yun dates, names, diba? So parang rote learning, lumaki tayo. Tandaan mo naman si Galen, tandaan mo si ganyan, di ba? Puro mga pangalan at mga petsa. Tapos ano naman ang saysay nung petsa? Anong saysay no? So, hindi ko na siya dinidiscuss, pero readings. Okay? So, sasabihin ko to read on it because I might get items as well from those. Pero hindi na ako nagbibigay ng masyadong importansya sa historical perspective. Okay? So, dito rin sa Unit 1, of course, here is where we look at what will characterize ba abnormal behavior, yung basic characteristic natin, di ba? Siyempre, it should depart from some norm, but it should be distressful for the person as well and to society. Yun yung 3 key criteria that we have to remember. It departs from some norm, but departing from a norm is not solely abnormal na, di ba? It should be distressful to the person and distressful for society.
For others, yeah.
So, for others. So, yun. So, hindi mo kaya palagi sinasabi ko sa estudyante, hindi mo pwede, umiinom ako, social drinker lang ako. Social drinker, but when you're drunk, di ba, you hit on your wife.
Yes.
Okay, di ba? Hindi ka na nakakapasok. So, affected na. Tapos, nakakaroon ka na ng sakit sa atay. Okay, so, hindi na yan social drinking. Abnormal drinking behavior na yan. Yeah. And of course, the importance of Unit 1 is when we establish try to discuss cultural relativity. Okay, so relativism. So, I discuss a little bit on the culture-bound syndromes, okay, or we call it culture-specific syndromes. Yan. And then Filipino psychopathology. So, para tignan natin yung tubong atin at yung mga words or mga terms na ginagamit natin, ay hindi lang pala sa Pilipino meron yung katulad ng amok. Kala natin dito lang, di ba? Pero it's shared by other Malay culture and they call it Austronesian mood disorder. Yung bangungot, kala natin dito lang yan, di ba? Ay sa Thailand meron din. Ang tawag naman nila Brugada syndrome. Okay? At pareho din kasi ingestion ng rice ang associated ng brugada. Kaya dito sa atin,
too much eating of rice.
Too much eating, oo. So yung ganon. And kaya lang, like yung amok, sir, hindi ba yan rage disorder din in the Western culture? Sabi ko hindi. Kasi ang amok, merong amnestic state, di ba? During that time. Wala yun sa rage disorder. Sa rage disorder, aware sila, wala lang control. So yun, and then we touch on a little bit of the different culture-bound syndromes like Koro, which is popular, which is often in Southeast Asia, in China, or they call it shrinking penis, di ba? Oo. Okay? Yun. So, yun. Na could be underlying castration anxiety, di ba? Oo. And then yung Taijin Kofusho, di ba, in Japan, which is like a social phobia, pero very distinct. And then Kitsunetsuki, where in Japanese culture then that they think they're turning into foxes. So parang common sa European countries yung Wendigo, di ba? Or yung lycanthropy, di ba? So, yeah. So, yung lycanthropy, vampirism, yung mga, sabi ko, culture yan, yung mga culture. So, yun yung tinatouch ko sa Unit 1. And then, Unit 2, of course, ito na yung kaya importante yung, foundation courses kasi babalikan mo. So, this will help you discuss it as general na lang. Kasi alam mo na nagdaan na sila ng biopsych, nagdaraan na ng neuroana, nagdaan na ng TOP. So, hindi mo na kailangan pang i-discuss thoroughly. Ang gagawin mo, i-connect mo lang. Bakit importante siya sa RPsy? Okay? So, next slide. So, of course, yun nga, in terms of causality, click 1, Ms. Ver, yan. I anchor on the biological perspective, we emphasize on the biological processes. And here is where I quickly review nyo, Oroana, biopsy. So, I tell them, hindi ko na yan i-discuss, So, dapat, alam nyo na yung mga connexos ng neurotransmitter, synapse, alam nyo na yan, sasabihin ko. Mag-center lang tayo. Ano ba yung mga parts niyan? Ano ba yung mga problems ng reuptake mechanism niyan later on that implicated? And then, of course, next, Ms. Ver, yan. Siyempre, dito, babalikan mo. TOP, TOR. Review. So, a little bit of review lang ako from, siyempre, hindi pwedeng mawala si Freud. Sa review, and then down to the different paradigms na. So from the psychodynamic, humanistic existential, cognitive, and then learning paradigm. Diba? So doon. So review lang. And then next, yan. Since ito yung social. So of course, meron naman silang sociology, tapos merong social psych. But here is where I discuss yan. The mechanisms involved in the environment. So I tell them, it's a feedback loop. So hindi natin alam alin bang nauna, alin ang talagang nagpalala, but it's a feedback loop. So hanggang ngayon, debate pa yan, chicken or the egg, alin ba nauna, di ba? So it could be both, di ba? Both ways. So and then, of course, since I'm already in causality, next slide, I always discuss the diathesis stress.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Na kung sa TOP, kasama na si Eysenck, sa na-discuss nyo sa TOP, pwede na, i-touch base dito. Kasi si Eysenck, di ba, biological basis siya of personality. So nabanggit na sa theory ni Eysenck kasi yung diathesis stress. So dito medyo review na lang din, and then you say, yeah, the diathesis is the predisposition and the stress is the precipitating. So lalo na ngayon, pwede nating i-connect. May pandemya, ang taas ng stress level. So yung mga like me, medyo mataas ang diathesis ko because anxiety runs in my family. I'm in a relationship with my anxiety. Alam ng mga estudyante ko yan, dinadiagnose nila ako of obsessive compulsive. Lumalabas yung pag-anal character ko. So yon. So yan. And I freely I disclose then that schizophrenia runs in my family. Okay, so schizophrenia runs in my family. Okay, so yeah, so I have family members who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia and who've had brief psychotic disorders in the past. So yun, so that's why I tell them I control my stress level. And yan, yoga helped me a lot. Although I haven't been practicing as regularly since the lockdown. But yun, so dito ko pinapasok na. Dito na pwede mong i-discuss rin yung the stress levels in the environment and how is it affecting you. So kaya sabi ko, kung meron ka roommate na malakas uminom, nakikipagsabayan ka sa kanya, hindi mo maalam, mataas ang predisposition mo. So bakit ka nagtataka na siya hindi naman naging alcoholic, ikaw naging alcoholic? Kasi, diba? So yeah, then I show them this particular figure from Cengage sa pakita, diba? Ang problema, hindi natin madalas inaalam yung history natin ng psychological disorders. Okay? Next, in the unit, would be yan. Yung unit 3 is I discuss symptomatology. So, we have to differentiate. Here is where I differentiate signs. Ano bang kaibahan ng senyales sa simptomas? Okay? And then technically, I tell them most of the conditions, psychological conditions that we will be discussing are not technically disorders, they are syndromes, diba? So syndromes are groups of signs and symptoms that occur together to form a particular classification. Kaya lang sabi ko, mas alam lahat ng tao yung sabihin na disorder, diba? Pero technically, syndrome siya. Kasi hindi siya very specific, diba? So yung dalawang tao na may clinical depression, maaring magkaiba yan ng simptomas. Yes. Na-meet nila yung basic diagnostic criteria, pero yung symptoms at senyales nila magkaiba. So dito, very useful sa akin dahil nga I came from, my professor kasi in my master's degree was a psychiatrist. So na-introduce ako sa synopsis of psychiatry. So meron dong table na typical signs and symptoms. So yon? I tell my students to be familiar. Sabi ko, hindi nyo naman kailangan i-memorize. O kaya yung glossary of terms ng DSM. Isa yun sa mga, sabi ko, you could learn a word per day, a symptom per day. Okay, para madali kang, so every day pwede kang magbasa ng isang symptoms at maintindihan mo, you don't need to memorize, mga keywords lang naman para malaman mo. Kasi yun yung importante because in order for us to assess later on yan, sa assessment, ang ina-assess natin, na alam natin, we gather signs and symptoms Even when we use tests, these are symptoms. And when we do treatment, we're not treating the disorder, we're treating the symptoms. So kaya yung unit 3 ko is really for them to be familiar with the typical signs and symptoms, yung mga different categories of disorders of perception, disorders of thought, disorders of thought, disorders of content of thought, stream of thought, form of thought, di ba? Disorders of motivation, disorders of motor, verbal and motor. Maging familiar lang, okay, sa mga simptomas. Okay? Although doon, minsan heavy ako on the mga exams dito heavy on the recall. Okay? Kasi later on, yun rin ang inaano ko na para hindi sila nakarely sa multiple choice na recognition kasi napipili mo doon yung sagot, di ba? Pero kung meron kang strong recall, pag nakakuha kita ka na ng mga choices ng items, madali mo nang ma-identify. Kasi kahit wala yung choices, masasagot mo yung tanong nang wala yung choices. So parang ganon. So yung typical signs and symptoms, medyo dito nandun ako, parang med school. Talagang kailangan, sabi ko, hindi mo naman kailangan talagang may memorize per se. Kasi like in practice, babalikan mo naman yan to review, di ba? And ito, yung next unit 4, yung assessment and diagnosis, ito na yung dapat may strong foundation ka of psych assessment before this, di ba? Pero, dito sa part na to, dinadaanan ko lang yung testing, pero nandun ako sa interview, psychological history, yan, oo. Although meron din kasi sa UST na clinical psych, whether na pre-rec ang RPsy, may clinical psych na nandun yung actual application. Dito dinidiscuss ko na yung 3 tools of assessment. Siyempre, we are all aware that 3 tools of assessment would be interview, observation, and test battery. Since may psych assessment na sila for the test battery, sabi ko, kailangan heavy ka on how would you draw out symptoms during interview. So yung mental status examination, going through the history, the anamnesis. So natutunan ko sa isang psychiatry made ridiculously simple, yung joy map. Ayan. So I would like to share yung joy map. These are the acronyms of the areas of functioning that you determine during your assessment. Assessment is when we gather signs and symptoms. So look at the judgment, kaya J. Try to find out their judgment, yan. And then orientation times 3, people, place, di ba? And then time, orientation times 3. Then I, intellectual functioning. So here, pwede kayong mga simple test of intelligence lang para malaman mo concrete thinker ba to, abstract thinker, yan. Dito pwede ka magbigay ng mga saying, yan. Kung makukuha nila, di ba? Yung thought process nila, yung I. And then M is memory. So pwede ka mag-test ng immediate recall, recent recall, yan. And then A is di ba? So, yung A is appearance. So, dapat natitignan mo, disheveled ba ang hair? O uso ang bed hair, di ba? Habang hindi na, di ba? Hindi yung button ng shirt, magkaibang kulay. So, tignan mo yung appearance kasi doon makikita yung mga overt behaviors. And then, the last T, kaya joy math, is thought process. Okay? Delusion of association, may clanging, may delusions, yan. So, yung joy math is a good acronym during your your interview.
Orientation. Anong yung tatlong O po? Ulit. Orientation.
J is judgment. O is orientation. Tapos orientation times 3. Person, place, time.
Person, place, time. Yan.
Tatanungin mo, di ba? Ano po ang pangalan mo? So, kilala mo ba kung sino ako? Person, di ba? Tapos, alam mo ba kung ano oras na ngayon? Di ba? Alam mo kung nasan ka ngayon? Di ba? Anong petsa ngayon? Yan. So, yung orientation nila, kasi most patients, di ba, may problema yan, orientation ng time, place, and person. So, orientation times 3. And then, ayan, intellectual functioning. Pero kung nagpagbigay ka naman ng intelligence test, pwede na. Pero kahit wala testing, pwede mong i-test yung concrete thinking, abstract thinking. Then, memory, simple recall lang. And then, A, appearance, then P, thought process. So, yan yung sa assessment. And then, dito napapasok, Miss Munich, yung tinanong mo. So, dito, I discuss yung DSM and ICD.
Okay.
So, medyo umigsi ang discussion ko nito kasi dati, nung DSM-4TR, medyo lengthy ang discussion ng multi-action system.
Yes.
Okay? Pero ako, kung tatanungin, ewan ko bakit tinanggal ng DSM-5. DSM-5 kasi non-axial na siya, di ba? But I see the value kasi laking ang DSM for TR ako. It helps me a lot when I do my assessment and diagnosis with the multi-axial at the back of my mind. Kasi if you remember the multi-axial, axis 1, axis 2, 3, 4, okay, and 5, it represents the biopsychosocial model already. Okay, so axis 1 will be the major clinical disorders. Axis 2 is on intellectual functioning. Dito rin natin inaalam yung mga defense mechanisms sa axis 2 kasi nandoon ang personality disorders. Then axis 3 naman is on the general medical condition. So dapat inaalam natin dahil baka may mga simptomas ang nagdudulot yung general medical condition. May thyroid problem pala, kaya pala may symptoms of depression and anxiety, di ba? At lalo na rin kung buntis pala, at least na-note mo na buntis para kung malaman ng psychiatrist na may mga medications, hindi siya pwede kasi buntis siya, di ba? So yung general medical condition, although hindi naman tayo medical doctor, inaalam natin. And of course, yung axis 4, ito na yung mga psychosocial factors na walang pala ng trabaho. Ito yung mga precipitating. Ito yung mga stress. So, nawalan pala ng trabaho, namatayan, ganyan. So, yun. And then, of course, the 5 naman is the global functioning. So, sa akin, effective siya in practice. Although kaya lang, since DSM-5 na nga orientation, hindi ko na yan dinidiscuss sa klase. Tinanggal ko na. And then, I introduced them to ICD. Pero sinasabi ko nga na karamihan ng libro talaga natin, DSM, kasi foreign made So yun talaga makikita nyo sa mga box saka sa table sa tagiliran. Pero sabi ko, there is still ICD. And there are controversies. Sinasabi, there are countries na I've read in an article na kaya raw sa UK, less yung kanilang epidemiology of ADHD kasi ang ginagamit nila ICD, hindi DSM. So minsan nasa kind of diagnostic manual na ginagamit. Yun. Pero sabi ko, in practice, pareho. So yun. So yun yung unit 4. Okay? And then unit 5, ayan na yung mental disorders. Dito na tayo. Okay? So kaya mapapansin nyo, yung prelims part na ko, ang turo ko, most of unit 1 to 4, tapos around 1 to 2 ang inaabot ko sa unit 5. Okay? So itong unit 5, ito na yung mga mental disorders na dinidiscuss. Now, again, pansin nyo, naka-blue yung isa kasi sa UST, we have a different course for that. For the disorders in childhood. So kaya medyo bawas ang dinidiscuss ko sa RPsy kasi may isang course na magdidiscuss kasi diyan papasok yung ADHD, diyan yung learning disorder, diyan papasok ang autism spectrum. Yan. So ito yung kaya sinasabi kong negotiable kasi etong nung tinuro ko ngayon siya sa special term, hindi ko kaya paano ko maaabot yung lahat na yan i-discuss. So namili ako ng disorder na sa tingin ko, pwedeng hindi ko i-discuss. Okay? Nagbabago din yung sequence dyan. Nung unang tinuro ko ang RPsy sa UST, anxiety ang unang-una kong dinidiscuss. Ang unang dinidiscuss sa enumerated mental disorders, ang unang-una is anxiety. Why? Because yun nga, ang springboard ko, lahat naman ng TOP natin, anxiety ang pinagmumulan. Di ba? Sige, di-discuss natin tong anxiety disorders. Okay? And then after that, when I changed the sequence, noong, medyo dumadami ang concerns ng depression. So, inuna ko yung mood. Okay, inuna ko yung mood yun ang unang-unang disorder na i-discuss kasi medyo yung height ng mga issues on depression. And then, nung nag-board exams na, sinama ko na yung substance use. Kasi nga, di ba, ang dami nating issues of tokhang and ganyan. Discuss natin ng substance use. Plus, kaya ko mas ngayon, ever since I started teaching for the board na inuuna kong substance use, kasi sabi ko, ito yung unang-una nating i-rule out. Kapag nag-assessment tayo. Are they taking medication? So you have to rule out a substance use that may be the ones that are causing the symptoms. So pag na-rule out mo na, at least bawas na kasi sometimes it could be due to a substance. Kaya merong simptomas na lumalabas. So yun yung unang-unang i-rule out natin. Plus of course, yung mechanism of action ng gamot. Okay, so yan. Pero ito nga, kaya sa akin, negotiable to. Okay? So, if I remember correctly, ito kasi yung nasa CHED, CMO na mga courses. Okay? Binawasan ko na, dati meron din yung neurocognitive. Hindi ko na kaya. Meron dati dyan neurocognitive.
Heavy yun.
After schizophrenia, neurocognitive, dandun yung dementia mo din-discuss.
Yeah.
Pero hindi kaya sa 4 months, hindi kayang tapusin. So, yun yung yun yung aking tinanggal. Tapos, pag nakita nyo, palaging huli ang schizophrenia. Kasi, ang sa akin, gusto ko malaman nila, hindi lahat ng mental disorders baliw or psychosis. Kaya yan. So, tapos tinanggal ko na rin yung dati sa DSM ang tawag somatoform, ang tawag ngayon symptom-related, symptom disorder.
Yes.
Yun, hindi ko na rin yan natatouch. Okay? So, pero palaging magkadikit. It is best na magkadikit yung mood, anxiety, tsaka trauma. It's best na magkakadikit siya. Ibig sabihin, don't discuss it separately na medyo may break. Dapat duktong-duktong kasi madali siyang tahiin. Kasi related siya. Those with anxiety also co-occurs with mood, and people who have had PTSD, ASD, usually may anxiety mood yan, ganyan. So, yung tatlo, medyo yan. Mag-iba-iba lang ng sequence, alin ang nauna, pero dapat para magkasunod-sunod sila. And then, yung dissociative disorders, maganda kaduktong rin yan ng personality at schizophrenia. Lalo na yung personality, dapat maunas ka sa schizophrenia kasi kadalasan pre-morbid condition siya. Tsaka di ba sa linear na tinignan natin, pag meron ka ng PD, medyo may at risk ka na inclination, may strong inclination na maaring maging psychotic ka. So, at sinasabi yung neurosis na tinatawag, di ba, the personality disorder. So, yan. So, ito, negotiable kung paano yung sequence at kung gusto nyong dagdag. Siyempre, nung una kong tinuro to sa letran, meron pa akong sexual dysfunctions and
di ba? Because usually students would be interested to know about those.
Kaya paano pa? Saan mo pa isisingit, di ba? Magandang ipasok yun din kasi nandun papasok yung dating gender identity na ngayon, gender dysphoria. Pero, paano pa? Pero yun, interested lalo sa Masters and Johnson, tsaka Diyos ko, ay mga estudyante. Yan. Pero tinanggal na. Eating disorders dati dinidiscuss ko, pero hindi na kaya And tapos yun, sinasabi ko, less naman din ng cases natin of eating disorders in the Philippines, sabi ko. So yan, so negotiable. Pero kung kaya nyo, pwede nyo ipasok. Or ito yung mga topics na pwedeng mga pa-seminar, na out of the course na, baka yan yung pwede na out of the course kesa yung pasok sa 4 months or yung isang term. And then,
so this
next
is really
slide.
Good kasi talaga siya. Ililiit talaga yung...
Liliit, oo. And of course, yan. Ito yung dinidiscuss ko, yung next slide, yun yung dinidiscuss ko per disorder. Ito na yung subtopic. So when you discuss each of the conditions, ito dapat yung pasok sa banga na dapat nando. So yung, syempre, characteristic signs and symptoms or what we call the red flags. Kaya ito heavy yung foundation dapat on the symptomatology, di ba? And then etiology, na to, application na, anong part of the brain, yan ganyan, yan, blah, blah, blah. Anong functional cause nito, anong theory of personality, maari, kaya ganyan. And then intervention. A little bit lang kasi meron din kaming course ng counseling and psychotherapy. At saka sa TOP na nabigyan na rin ng di ba, bawat theory meron namang therapy yan, di ba? So anong intervention dito? And then, I also, dito medyo, frustrated psychiatrist kasi ako di ba? So, dito, I make them understand comorbidity, that disorders are overlapping. And you learn how to differentially diagnose because you have to learn how to rule in and rule out. Okay?
Process of elimination.
A process of elimination. Because can you go back to the previous slide, Ms. Ver? Because most of these disorders are overlapping. Kaya sabi ko, when I discussed them, dito pumapasok na we are more on dimensional approach rather than categorical na ngayon kasi nag-overlap na yung mga yan. Ang dami dyan comorbid. Kaya sinasabi ko, symptoms ang dapat inaalam. Kasi yung symptoms, anxiety, lahat yan may anxiety. Depression, lahat yan meron. Di ba? In terms of problems of self-concept or identity, lahat yan meron. The personalization, the realization ng dissociative, meron din yung iba yan dyan. So, paano mo malalaman? So, that's why next slide, okay? So, you have to learn how to do comorbidity. Ano yung comorbid, ano yung nag-overlap, at ano yung rule in and rule out natin. Okay? Next slide. Okay? And at the end, I always remind them, oh, don't self-diagnose, ha? Okay, the medical student syndrome is an often experienced by most students. In my experience teaching ABSI, no, marami sabi ng mga co-faculty, alam mo, ikaw ang nag-trigger kasi ang daming after nun, nagkakaroon ng realization, ay meron pala ako or lalapit. Oo. Okay, at dyan rin maraming sharing and I admire them for disclosing, and then that's when I also teach confidentiality and respect. You have to respect the person. I have students who disclose in class, sir, I have been diagnosed with bipolar, ganyan. So I commend them in class and then I make sure na, oh, okay, this is, okay, she is somebody has bipolar, but she's not bipolar. So, diba? Person first language, very important. So, hindi siya may bipolar, hindi siya bipolar, meron siyang bipolar. Person has bipolar disorder. So, yan. So, most students, yan, I have it too. It started with the medical students kasi kaya ang tawag medical student syndrome. So, bibigyan natin ng disclaimer. Okay? You could start this at the onset naman, at the start of the term. Pag nagbibigay ka ng orientation, pwede mong sasabihin yan, do not self-diagnose, be careful of sometimes it triggers, okay? I had a student who was diagnosed with clinical depression, tapos ang iprepresent pa niya sa klase, na feeling topic na i-present niya, major depressive disorder. So yung pagbabasa, nag-trigger sa kanya. So malalay ako. Malalay ako kasi while reading the signs and symptoms and trying to prepare for the presentation, nati-trigger siya. So, yun. So, why is it that most of us who study ABSI or even psychiatry in med school or students in med school is because of the two influences. The universality of human experience, and we all kasi experience some misfortunes in our life. So we often will label them as pathological when in fact they are just normal reactions to stress. Yeah. Kaya isa sa mga dinedebunk ko when I discuss PTSD, anong kaibahan ng stress sa trauma? Lahat kayo OA. Stress lang, trauma na, di ba? So, lahat nililabel nyo na experience nyo traumatic when it could be just stressful. So, don't make mountains out of molds, sabi ko. Yun. Or, meron kang kaklase na what you call that, malungkot lang, depressed na. So, anong kaibahan ng sadness sa depression? So, let's be very, very careful with labels. So, it could just be a normal reaction to stress, pero pinapathologize natin. And yun nga, kadalasan pag nag-aaral tayo, na paranoid tayo, we become more aware of ourselves, kaya nagsi-self-diagnose. And of course, one influence why we are all at risk of the medical student syndrome is because our tendency to compare to other people. Nakala natin yung pinagdadaanan natin mas malala sa pinagdadaanan ng iba, when in fact, pag nakausap naman natin, we're on the same plane or they're even experiencing worse than us. And we seem to say, bakit siya nakaka-recover? Bakit ako hindi? Iba ang recovery pace mo sa kanya. So, the tendency for us kasi to compare our experiences with others, kaya kadalasan, we psychopathologize ourselves already. Yon. Okay? So, next would be, eto na. So, once meron na tayong idea of the particular courses, or content rather of the course, is how will we set up now starting our virtual classroom? Okay? So how will we set up now? How will we prepare? Next slide, please, Ms. Ware, would be, let's revisit our course plan. Okay? So this is what I got during our trainings cited in UST. So prioritize learning outcomes. So revisit your course plan, consider modifying the course content. Kaya ako, nag-modify nga ako ngayon, nagbawas. So ano yung mga must knows and nice to know or versus nice to know. And then ano yung core outcome? Ano bang gusto mo talagang core outcome or ma-enhance after? So again, iba-iba kasi anong priority mo, di ba? So in modifying. So the best is to discuss it among the faculty members who've been teaching ABSI. Discuss it with your chair, with the department chair, at ano ba yung target natin, di ba? Siyempre, unang isipin, board exams, di ba? Pero, yun, ano ba yung, paano natin siya pagkakasyahin lahat? So, so revisit natin and try to modify. Now, there's no hard and fast rule on how we would modify. Okay? But in my case, ang minodify ko nga yung Unit 5. Okay? Next slide. Ay, nag-hang lang. Okay lang yan. Kapag experience technical problems. Okay. So, actually, yung next doon, ayan. Siyempre, establish our policy. May mga estudyante ako din. I've been known to very, very strict with classroom management. Since hindi nga classroom, virtual classroom, so we have to set policies, no? In my face-to-face, I'm very strict with gadgets. No cell phones inside the class kasi ako. Okay? As in, it's inside the bag. Bakit? Kasi I consider them distractors, di ba? Pero since ngayon, hindi pwedeng no gadget kasi gagamitin nila, di ba? Ang sa akin lang, minimize or again, strictly, alam mo may mga estudyante kasi, dalawang laptop niyan lalo pag nagtitake ng exams. Kasi nag-google sa kabila, di ba? Yan. Ginugoogle, yan ganyan. So, ang sa akin kasi minsan if you have too many gadgets, yung attention span mo, nadidistract ka, at minsan yun, nakaka-disrupt. Like now, when I told you guys, I told you yesterday, pag may webinar ako, naka-silent mode ang mga cellphones, di ba? Para walang, kasi laptop lang yung gamit. So, I strictly prohibit them. But of course, it's hard for me to find out, di ba? Kasi hindi ko naman sila minsan nakikita. Pero sabi ko, yun, lalo na humihina ang signal natin kasi ang dami yung gadgets na nakakonect. Diba? Gamit na nga ng nanay mo, tatay mo, kapatid mo. Tapos, diba, the more that gadgets are using the Wi-Fi, umabagal. So sabi ko, minimize natin, especially during class time. And then yan, uphold academic honesty. Okay, yan. So, palagi kasi di Google, plagiarism. So, set policies. Okay, set your own virtual classroom policy that is aligned then with your student handbook. Okay, next would be, set a time for course orientation. Very critical yung course orientation nyo at the start of your virtual class. Okay, it is best that the first few meetings should be dedicated to establishing your clear expectations and build a collaborative atmosphere with students. So later on, I will touch on the collaborative atmosphere na telling them na hindi lang ako ang magsasalita dito. You have to do your part. In fact, sabi ko, the larger part is on the students. Okay? Then establish consistent and predictable schedules for sharing resources and information. So, meron naman tayo later, synchronous, asynchronous, pero dapat may consistent and predictable schedule ka lang. Okay? And then when you give your instruction, it should be explicit, and brief instructions to clarify communications. Kaya dapat naka-layout rin yan sa course plan. Mga estudyante nga, explicit na, natatanong pa. Nandun na nga, di ba, natatanong pa. Minsan matatawa ka, di ba? Nandun na, nakasulat na, pero tatanong pa. Kasi nga, karamihan sa mga estudyante, ayaw nagbabasa, di ba? So, yun. You have to be very explicit. Do not assume na alam na nila. Do not assume na maiintindihan na nila. Do not assume na babasahin nila. So kung pwedeng sabihin nyo na tapos tsaka sabihin read after. So be very explicit and brief in your instructions. Next would be, next slide. This is an example. Ito yung weekly class target ko for this special term. So working yan. So nakita nyo, today's July 20, nakasynchronous ako kaninang umaga. So ang discussion namin was schizophrenia, spectrum, and other psychotic disorders. So meron kaming weekly class target. Special term to kaya very compact. Ang hirap pa juggle. So you could have this kind of class targets for the 4 months. Okay, so para maano mo ano yung synchronous, ano yung asynchronous, tapos kailan yung summative, yan ganyan. But in UST, we are being encouraged more on the asynchronous. Okay? So parang sinasabi ko magwi-weekly class target, dapat mas marami yung async kesa sa sync. Okay? Kasi yung sync, although sa sync kasi meron yung class schedule, di ba? Minsan yung estudyante hindi nakakapasok during that poor internet or what, yung ganyan. Or may kasabay na kapatid, di ba? Sa elementary na naka-online din ng ganung oras, so talagang bumabagal yung internet nila. Katapos kuya pa naka-work from home din. So kaya kumbaga sabi sa amin, preferably more on the asynchronous rather than the synchronous. And the synchronous should be on clarifications, consultations, yung ganyan. So, this is just as an example. So, may mga color coding para malaman. At alam nila, start pa lang ng term, alam na nila. And again, may mga estudyante na, ay, hindi ko po alam kailan niya. Di ba? May schedule. Di ba? Di ba? So may schedule. Balik sa course plan. Balikan po ang course plan.
Really important na
And I tell them, kung meron kayong printer, print ang course plan ha, i-print. Okay? I-print nyo para kahit walang baterya ang laptop, cellphone, pwede nyo i-access ang course plan. Okay, that's the problem of now, digital lahat So, pero experience has it ng mga estudyante, parang mas okay sa kanila yung actual textbook kasi hawak mo, di ba? Kahit mahina ang signal, makakapagbasa ka, makakapag-review ka. Okay? So, weekly task targets and expectations. Next. Set boundaries for communication. Dear teachers, we are not on call 24/7.
Aray.
Set boundaries for communication sa mga estudyante. Ang mga bosses ka natin, wala nang boundaries sa email, sa messenger, sa text, diba? So students then, we have to set boundaries. When will they get in touch with you? So that's why I don't give my personal number. I don't even give my personal messenger kasi 24/7, we're not on call 24/7. Self-care, dear faculty, self-care. Okay? Assign a class coordinator. It works well even during my face-to-face. Usually it's the class president. Okay? So madalas ang aking cellphone, mobile number, ang meron lang copy niyan ang class officers. Sila lang. At kadalasan ay coordinate directly with the class president. Tapos trickle down na bahala na sila paano nila. Sa email din ay email the class secretary. Yun lang. Bahala na ang class secretary mag-trickle down ng email. So pwede silang merong group email, group test, messenger, Viber. Bahala na sila pero hindi ako kasama. Hindi ako kasama sa Viber group nila. Hindi ako kasama sa email thread. Hindi. Kasi nga, di ba, wala na tayong magiging me time. Okay? So, or they could create a class chat group. Bahala na sila. Pero kumbaga may isa or dalawang tao lang tayo na kinakausap. Okay? So, nandun lang. So, madalas, explicit ang email instructions ko, tapos sasabihin ko lang forward to the class. Sometimes you don't need to explain. So, nandun na, detailed. Okay? Detailed step-by-step procedures of submission of requirements and then email to the class. So, para wala ring transfer of communication na yung pag-translate ng presidente, iba yung meaning. So, basahin lang. Oo. So, yung ganon. So, we have to set boundaries in terms of communication. Okay? Providing 24/7 tech support. Tanong who? Okay? Hindi ko din yan pinakikialaman dahil hindi ako 24/7 tech support. So later on, i-discuss natin yan sa mga platform. Since UST has a particular LMS, ang sa akin sila ang kontakin nyo. Hindi ko alam bakit hindi nag-appear sa'yo yung online na nag-appear sa buong class. Kasi minsan linggo, gabi, may screenshot pa sila, mega screenshot. Hindi ko yan masasagot. Ang problema, pag kayo ang nag-setup nung Zoom, personal mong sinetup, ikaw ang 24/7 tech support. So, yan ang greatest challenge natin. Bukod sa guro, tech support din tayo. Diba? So ako, limited rin yung knowledge ko in terms of the tech. So, hindi ko yan masasagot. Bakit lalo na kung school-based yung system, diba? So, hindi ako tiga edtech. Hindi ko yan masasagot. Diba? And yan, determine schedule that is best for you. Okay? Lalo na sa asynchronous. Kapag gamay na gamay mo na, alam mo ng time of the day, ano yung hindi masyadong gumagamit ang ibang mga kasambahay nyo, ng internet, medyo malakas, when the internet signal is strong. Okay, doon ka siguro makapagbasa, doon ka pwedeng mag-download. But again, you have to be very, very understanding. Kasi even as faculty, we experience problems of the day when the internet is strong. Diba? So, yun. Kaya minsan talagang, di ba, like, ito, may delayed ng 20 seconds tayo. Wala naman tayong magagawa kasi system na yon. So, we encourage students to determine a schedule that is best for them. So, in the course of the week, malalaman na nila yan, weekend ba, what time of the day, or they could talk with fellow members at home. O, pag pwede itong oras na to akin, ba? Pwede, akin to. I tell, pwedeng akin to, yung day lang to na akin ito. Diba? Para at least yung signal medyo Ang hirap din na encounter ng students ko, they tell me, where in the house will they have their online class? Di ba? Kasi sir, wala akong sariling kwarto. I share it with my brother. Or at times I'm at the dining area and my mom keeps on passing at my back, di ba? I'm at the kitchen area. So yung mga ganong challenge na iintindihan ko sa mga bata, wala silang private space to do their online classes. So ang hirap. Wala akong masabi na hanap ka na lang dyan or pwedeng yun nga. Yun yung mga personal na sinasabi ko sa kanila dahil yun yung mga kadalasan na encounter nilang problems during the ECQ. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay. Yan. So, ito ang mindset. I think we have to have our classroom mindset and in the virtual mindset. Ano ba yung mindset natin? Ang mindset ko palagi is the facilitate. Ang dapat tanong natin, how may I be able to facilitate my students to learn abnormal psych? Hindi how I may be able to teach. Okay? I think we all know already, everybody already knows, hindi na tayo teacher-centered. Pero ang estudyante at ang mga magulang, ang konsepto pa rin nila ng pag-aaral, teacher-centered, na lahat ibibigay ng teacher. Okay? So I tell my students both online and face-to-face, I'm a facilitator of learning. I will facilitate, but I will not spoon-feed everything to you. So ang tanong natin, how may I be able to facilitate them to learn? But not for me to teach. Okay? Kasi they have their access to their own CPU. Sila magda-download lang nun sa sarili nila. So ang may offer ko lang as many that they could download by themselves. Diba? So yun yung maging mindset natin. How can I facilitate them to learn rather than how could I teach them RPsy? Okay? Next is the mindset of the students. So yan. And this is helpful to my students in RPsy kasi nag-TOL na. So sa TOL talagang, 'di ba? Nandun talaga tayo na the strengthening of the student-centered learning, 'di ba? Tapos brain-based. So sinasabi ko student-centered. Ikaw yung learner. Ikaw makakaalam kung how best you will learn. I could provide resources, opportunities for you to learn. And self-directed, hindi kita pwedeng piliting matuto. Ikaw yung magdidirect ng sarili mo. So sabi ko, basa. Kung hindi ka magbabasa, hindi mo mada-download sa CPU mo, sa utak mo, yung lesson kasi hindi ka nagbasa. The best way for it to reach your hippocampus, your memory system is for you to read. Diba? I cannot download it for you. So self-directed. Dapat ikaw, motivated ka to learn. Okay? And self-paced kasi nga, diba? Dapat talaga although talaga may tamad-tamaran moments, diba? Self-paced. Hindi kita pwedeng piliting mag-aral kung wala ka talaga sa mood mag-aral. Pero, so I always tell my students, the ball is in your court. Lalo na dito sa virtual. Okay? Even in the classroom setup, I always tell them, the ball is always in your court. Pasa ko lang sa inyo Ako magpapasa. At yung ipapasa ko, as much as possible, simplified. Okay? Yung sa tingin ko Pero kung hindi mo sasaluhin yung bola, hindi ka matututo. Diba? So yun. So ito yung mindset. At yun talaga, palagi ko sinasabi sa kanila, hindi nyo matututunan ng RPsy kung hindi kayo magbabasa. Kung simple makikinig lang kayo sa akin, naasa kayo sa lectures ko or sa PowerPoint ko, it's not enough kasi hindi lahat maituturo ko lalabas sa board exams. Hindi ko mako-cover to cover ang libro at hindi rin nga lahat ng ang librong ginagamit natin doon lalabas. In fact, wala namang basis ng libro ang mga item developers, ang mga item writers nating mga nasa PRB, they will not refer to any textbook. So talagang dapat magbasa ka. Next slide. And yan, multimodal, multisensory. Okay? So dapat as many. Because I always assume, it's not to stereotype, no, but I always assume that my students have some learning difficulties. Para baka hindi sila more on visual, baka auditory, tapos yon. Kaya sabi ko touch, kaya misman mas okay yung libro na hawak kasi merong other sensory yun eh. So sabi ko dapat multimodal could mean different avenues. So email, text, yung mga resources natin, di ba? Films, okay? And then multisensory as much as possible. Kung pwede rin may action na pwede kayong gawin. Dati, pero pagod na ako, when I teach symptomatology before, when I was younger, inaarte ko pa yung mga simptomas na yan.
Ang
diba?
galing!
Atatonia, rigidity, yan. Diba? Minsan nag-fugue state pa ako, lalabas ako ng classroom, na bakit lumabas? Kasi babalik, nag-fugue state ako, ganyan. Pero ngayon, diba, noon. So, nung nandun sa letra nun, inaarte ko pa. Kaya after nung unit 3, on symptomatology, pagod ako kasi inaarte ko. Ngayon, hindi na. Hindi ko na kayang i-arte. Kaya may mga visuals. Oo. So, synchronous and asynchronous, you all know this paulit-ulit na. So, yun yung mindset dapat. Okay? Next slide. Yan. Eto, yan. So, quickly lang. So, ano ba yung LMS nyo? Ang UST kasi meron. So, we're fortunate to have our UST Cloud Campus powered by Blackboard. Okay? So, yung 24/7 tech support, sabi ko, EdTech ang kontakin nyo dyan. Pero those of you, kung wala kayong LMS at na school, tapos magkapit ka ng Zoom o Google Meet, ikaw, di ba? Ito bago sa akin to. Thank you for introducing me to StreamYard, di ba? Ikaw ang tech support. Di ba? Kasi ikaw yung nag-set up. So, yun yung challenge talaga rin natin on the tech support. Okay? Next is yan. Talagang preparation. We have to prepare our materials ahead of time. Dito ako nagkulang. Nitong special term, hindi kagad ako nakapag-prepare. So yung mga PowerPoints ko, hindi ko pa recorded. So isa yon sa encourage, recorded PowerPoint presentations. Para pwedeng asynchronous. Diba? Pakikinggan na lang nila. Kaya lang sobrang ang tagal ko mag-record. Nag-record lang. Ang unang recording ko ng PowerPoint ko is the orientation. Nako-conscious ako pag pwede naman i-edit. Mabot ako ng 3 oras sa 15 slide por Diyos por Santo, di ba? Hindi ako satisfied sa audio ko. Parang ang hina. Parang wrong pronunciation. Naku po. So, yun. So, we have to record our PowerPoint presentations. Yan. Since we have our Blackboard nga, may mga online learning exercises ako after every topic may Lex akong tawag, learning exercise. 10 to 15 items lang naman yan. And then I have a lot of supplementary readings. Kaya walang tigil din talagang pagbabasa sila. So, siguro nanonotice nyo naman, di ba, sa teaching tsaka sa LGD, ang hindi ko mag-share, di ba? Yan. Ang hindi ko talagang mag-share. Mga nababasa ko, ganyan. So, may mga ganyan din ako na yung minsan, yung mga na-share ko pala dati, sabi, sir, hindi na nag-work yung site. Sorry, hindi ko na balikan. Close na pala. So, yun. So, yeah, daming resources that you could, of course, from legitimate sources that you could share online. From Psychology Today, APA, ACA, yan mga ganyan. Outrage Magazine, yan. Okay, that you could share. That's readily readable. Mga 2-minute read lang. Okay? That could supplement yung textbook. Then we could have breakout groups or sessions. Although I haven't really done it yet here in my special term class. Pero yan, yung isang faculty ko, sabi niya, pwede mong magbigay ka ng parang mag-post ka ng question, tapos magbe-breakout sila. Particular topic. Sa TOP niya yun ginawa Meron siyang question, parang general question or parang qualitative design So merong general question and they will answer, they will meet. So pwede kang mag-breakout sila, tapos magbabalik na, tapos i-report nila. I-feedback nila yung naging sagot nila, and then you discuss. Kaya lang, sa 1 hour and a half, minsan, di ba, ubos yung oras, tapos may lag pa ng buffering. So, minsan doon, nakaka-tension. Kaya ako medyo minsan less ako personally. Even in face-to-face, bihira ako magpa-groupings. Kasi feeling ko kain oras. Mag-group, maghihilahan ng silya, magbibilugan. Ay, Mariosep. Tapos samot-sari, sabay-sabay na nagdi-discuss. Yan. Minsan may sensory overload ako dyan, di ba? Kaya, so, it doesn't work for me. But if it works for you, you could try it out. And then this really works a lot for my students. I tell them to develop or make reviewers.
Sila yung magde-develop.
Sila yung gagawa.
Okay. But you have to cite the references.
Not necessary. It's your own. How will you do your reviewer? Okay? Kasi ang hilig nila nag-highlight, di ba? Walang tigil na highlight. Sabi ko, yung libro nyo, ang kulay na lang natira yung puti. Hinighlight mo na lahat di ba? Kaya nga highlighter siya Pag tingin ko ng TOP book, sir, at least kita mo na nabasa ko. O nga, binasa mo naman lahat, di ba? Yan, pag hinighlight. So sabi ko, make a reviewer, extract. Tapos I tell them, it could be handwritten, it could be encoded, up to you. Then I let them pass it to me at the end of the term. Bakit? Para ma-compel silang gumawa ng reviewer. Kasi when you're making a reviewer, nagre-review ka na niyan.
Oh, okay.
Nasa mo, in-extract mo, in-organize mo. Kaya sabi ko, you could do it tabular, keywords, or you could do it in text form. Okay? Kasi when you read it and then you extract and make your reviewer, you're doing already, you're looking at keywords, you're organizing your thoughts, you're making planning already on what best for you. Kaya di ba ang hirap magbasa ng reviewer ng kaklase mo kasi hindi ka ang gumawa.
True.
Pero yung sarili mong reviewer, kahit nakapikit ka, habang nag-e-exam, alam ko yan, sinulat ko yan sa 3rd page hinighlight ko pa. May mga estudyante, may papikit-pikit pa kasi bini-visualize nila, di ba? So kaya kung gumawa ka ng reviewer, multisensory din yon. Kasi nagsulat ka ngayon din talaga sinasabi natin, writing, mas yung pasok ng learning sa ating brain when we write, kesa yung ganyan. Okay? So sabi ko, preferably handwritten, tapos yun. So, it helps them. Pero syempre, hindi ko naman pwedeng i-compel. Okay? Kaya ginagawa ko, pinapasubmit ko. Pero talagang, alam ko, kung ang ginawa mong reviewer, 3-page lang, di yan lang na-review mo. Kaya, nung exam, hirapan ka, di ba? Yun. So, again, no need for citation kasi hindi mo naman ipapublish. Kung ano yung intindi mo, maigi rin yun, di ba? You could translate in your own words how you understood the symptom, how do you understand the process, you paraphrase at your own words. So, mas madali yung aral nila. So, yun. Why? Because I grew up making reviewers. May compre, yan, ganyan. So, sabi ko, strategy that works for me. So, yun. Next slide. Yan. So, ito yung mga I do, kasi hindi ko na kayang i-arte. May mga pa-film viewings ako. So, for every disorder, may mga films ako na make sure lahat yan napanood ko na. So that they could watch and they could see in action. Kasi ang hirap imagine ang simptomas nang hindi naman natin nakikita. Pero may disclaimer ako. Sabi ko, syempre, cinematic yan. Blown out of perspective. Minsan OA. Pero di natin titignan ano yung truth doon sa simptomas. That's why like I tell them, kaya groundbreaking yung A Beautiful Mind, di ba, na film about schizophrenia. Because you see the world through the eyes of a person with schizophrenia. That's how they see it. Kasi hindi mo mailagay yung sarili mo, di ba? How will you empathize? This is how they see the world, through the lens, through the eyes of a person with schizophrenia. So for every disorder, meron ako mga list of films. Saka meron ako sinishare sa kanilang filmography, o mga psych movies. Ang dami na niyan sa internet. Okay? And then we get to discuss. Okay? We get to discuss, we get to critique. When I say reflection, I do reflection essays for the film. I say, wag kang hindi to film analysis, hindi acting ang titignan mo. Insight mo, ano yung nakuha mo doon? ano yung nakarelate ka ba, yung ano yung natutunan mo rin sa disorder na pinakita or sa symptoms na pinakita. Ganyan. So, para may visual sila, and students love to watch, di ba? They'd rather watch rather than read. Kaya lang, maging careful lang tayo sa mga films dahil may mga films na hindi naman exact yung depiction. Like yung Joker, I used the film for Unit 1. For myths and misconceptions, because there are a lot of there that we could debunk the myths, di ba, regarding Joker, yung ganyan. So yung ganon, yung mga ganon na I could, yung ginamit ko yung 28 Days, no, lumang film na, di ba, ni Sandra Bullock. Kasi because of alcoholism, tsaka doon merong clear na family history kung bakit maaari siyang naging alcoholic. So, may mga madodraw out tayong ganon. Oo. And surprisingly, di ba, I'm not fond of K-dramas, no? But when the ECQ came, I was introduced to alam nyo, may mga K-dramas na may mga psych themes. Kaya ang tawa ng tawa yung mga friends ko. Ano ka ba? K-drama na nga? Psych theme pa? Yan. Dr. Frost. Yan. Yung it's okay, ganyan. Basta merong mga clear depictions, ha, tsaka nakaka-relate. Meron pa ako, a few days ako natapos ko yung about prosopagnosia. So, tapos merong isang K-drama na meron siyang parang case na sinusolve palagi. It's not related, psych-related. Yung Madam Anton, napanood ko recently, counseling and psychotherapy. So, meron. So, pero syempre, hindi ko nung pwedeng i-record kasi ang haba nila para panoorin, di ba? 16 episodes, 14 episodes. Pero, para maging visual, dapat makisabay. Although may mga old films ako, may mga bago-bago para nakaka-relate sila. Oo. And then, collaborative group work. This means, with student groupings. So that they could, when I do class presentation, so they present the disorder, sila yung mag-group together, ganyan. Tapos, usually at the end, kahit hindi pa noong virtual, meron akong summative project na every group assigned sa isang disorder, ang isang group, meron gagawa sila ng advocacy yung psychoeducation materials. Probably you could see some already in the YouTube na mga gawa ng estudyante ko. So, infographics and videos, okay? Tapos ang medium, sabi ko, kung pwede, kung English, dapat may subtitle, or kung magtatagalog, dapat may subtitle English para, So, I encourage them, may subtitling. Okay? At saka sabi ko, kung magamit yung sariling wika, para mas marami tayong ma-reach. Tapos yan. And then, I let them upload to social media, yung infographics, parang advocacy or Facebook or YouTube. But I tell them, no plagiarism. Okay? And no academic dishonesty. So if you need to cite sources in the video, in your infographic, you have to do proper citations. Okay? Next slide. Okay. So what stays the same? So after all the virtual, I got this from a good source on 9 ways of online teaching should be different. This is an exact quote from the article. So what stays the same? So you have, not everything in online teaching is practically different. Some aspects of good teaching should definitely stay the same. Ito yung sinasabi ng article. Clear and consistent communication should be the same, whether virtual or face-to-face. Creating explicit and consistent rituals and routines, as I mentioned, schedules should stay the same. Using research-based, evidence-based instruction strategies should be the same. Then determine to use digital or non-digital tools. So dapat alam mo, meron na hindi lahat naman ng digital means, di ba? And focus on authentic learning. Kung ano yung ano natin gusto mas matutunan. And I forgot to mention, sa collaborative, one good way is to collaborative work, collaborate with your other faculty members. Kung pwedeng team teach, yun ang medyo okay sa virtual. Baka yung oras na yon, wala man siyang klase, baka pwede kang invited speaker.
Yes.
Or you could ask, so yung collaboration is not only among students, we collaborate with other faculty members or other resource persons that we could get effective practices from them. Or again, if they're free during the synchronous time, then they could share their time. Okay? And last slide. Okay, so I think I'd like to leave this thought for everybody. Okay, the learning environment may be a bit different for all of us. Okay, but we have to bear in mind that a good educator will remain a good educator in whatever platform, whether it's face to face or whether it's virtual. If you're a good educator, you're a good educator. And let's just be confident that our best practices or our effective practices will still be effective and applicable even virtually. Okay, so ako rin medyo nag-doubt ako sa sarili ko. Will this work in the virtual platform? So just have to be confident na it will work. Okay, as long as sincere tayo that we want to facilitate learning in our students. Okay, so maraming salamat. Okay. I do hope
Yay!
important points in my discussion.
Punong-puno. Maraming salamat, Sir Eric. Ang dami kong natutunan.
Talagang may paklaw.
Yes, oo. Kasi nga show nga to. Well, ang galing. Ngayon ko lang na natin yung joy math kanina. Ngayon ko lang nalaman yung joy math.
Correct.
Ikaw ba
yung libro
nun?
Yeah, I got it from a book. Ano yan? Psychiatry Made Ridiculously Simple. Ganyan lang siya kanipis. 1990s pa ang copyright. Yun yung reviewer ko nung nag-compre ako ng RPsy ng MA ko. So,
ang galing. No, but it's still very, very relevant. Ako ngayon ko lang nalaman yun na, oo nga, no, given na yun yung you can actually, well,
yung acronym.
Yes, oo.
Yung acronym, oo.
Ang galing.
Kasi marami kasing information. This is how you're going to organize information. Yeah.
Lalo na kasi when we do our anamnesis or psychiatric history, di ba? Ano ba yung mga dapat kong itanong? Ano yung dapat kong ialam? So yung initial consult, pero mas na to talaga mas clinical psych practice na to, pang MA na, di ba? Pagkaharap mo yung pasyente mo, joy math, ano yung dapat tatanungin ko, ano yung aalamin ko?
Ang galing. Alam mo, yun din naman yung advantage, Monique, no? Na when we have guests who are practitioners, no? Kasi I was telling my friend, sabi ko, nagturo ako ng RPsy, pero hindi ako ganyan magturo ng RPsy. Para ako very theoretical. Sabi ko, iba talaga. At saka, sabi mo, it's an acquired taste. We really can see your taste. Kasi, iba pag love mo talaga, no? Yung ginagawa natin. Ang galing. Tapos, meron kami mga comment kay Jakia, feeling ko student po to. Sabi niya, sorry sir, naging coloring book yung textbook ko. So, sabi din nung isa, sabi niya, akin po, sorry. Madami silang...
sila students mo, Sir Eric.
Okay, thank
Lahat
you.
Sila nag-sorry, oo.
No need to apologize, di ba? Ibig sabihin, kaya lang, di ba, nung binabasa mo na, ano na ang highlight mo? Kasi highlight mo lahat, di ba? Oo. Ganyan din minsan ako.
Gusto ko yung ubus yung oras kasi pag naghihilahan ng upuan, ikot-ikot. Sabi ko, yes, totoo yun. Nakakaubo siya ng oras na you could have used for something more productive.
Yes.
Yun. Meron lang tayong mga konting comments, Doc Mark.
Okay.
Sabi niya, I enjoy this session, fun learning moment. Natuwa ako dun sa setting boundaries with students. Self-care also highlighting sa book. Kasi I agree dun sa tech support. My gosh, no? At saka yung explicitly being clear, nakasulat na, hindi talaga nila binabasa sometimes. So it really needs a lot of patience.
Yeah.
But what I also like about what you mentioned, ang galing, Monique, no? We never really talked about, and I'm pretty sure because busy din yung ating mga guests, they would always add something that we've never discussed in the past episodes.
True.
For example, what stays the same and what doesn't stay the same.
Yes, true.
Being confident about about what we're doing. And then, gusto ko yung part on multimodal, multisensory.
Multisensory,
Oo.
ayun.
Kasi hindi natin na-discuss yun. Thank you, Doc Mark, for that. Hindi namin ever na-discuss yun before. Or at least na bring up ng mga guests before. So,
It's very nice to have a lesson learning plan. Tsaka naka-highlight kung ano yung part na synchronous, asynchronous, which dates, how many meetings, para ma-anticipate na ng mga students when to prepare, what to prepare, and also teachers, no? So it's good kasi para mas clear. Kasi most of the time, always na ngayon, na papalapit na yung August, na-freak out na yung freak out na yung mga teachers natin. So this is a good insight and a good strategy, no, to help you maximize your teaching preparations.
That's right. Organized, very organized. Naloka ako to.
Lumabas ko ng OC. OC kasi ako. Mataas yung symptoms ko ng obsessive compulsiveness. Pero sabi ko, hindi pa ako bordering to PD ha. Hindi ko pa na-meet yung full criteria, sabi ko. Hindi pa.
No, but in relation to that, siguro that also helps you become less stressed, no? Kasi it's organized eh. Kasi mas chaotic, mas magulo yung mas magiging stressful, which as you mentioned, sabi mo, you keep your stress level at a very, at a minimum, on a more pwedeng manageable level. Kasi nga, hindi yun mentally healthy din for you, for your students as well. I'm pretty sure some of our students din, gulong-gulo din kung anong gagawin nila. And we need to think, no, na Doc Mark is coming from one of the biggest universities, but they also experience these kinds of pressures.
And their students as well, no? I mean, pare-pareho tayong more or less, no? May universality ang experience natin. And it's good to know, and it's comforting to know that hindi tayo nag-iisa.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Puntahan lang natin yung iba pa nating mga comments. Sabi ni Den, ay, naubos na si Monique. Thank you, Sir Mark, for the input, especially the course outline. It will help me a lot. Buti na lang di pa ako tapos sa sa kanyang syllabus. No, but I really like that. No, maganda yung which are synchronous, what are asynchronous. At you mentioned nga, Doc Mark, no, it helps the students budget both their time and their money as well. No, if they need to download a lot of stuff, so very inclusive yung ganung klaseng sistema.
And it's always a good personal judgment, no, for a teacher. It's a personal, kahit si Sir Mark would say na depende sa'yo kung ano yung mas kailangang i-discuss. Hindi kailangang lahat ng chapters ng DSM pupusin mo kasi hindi mo talaga matatapos. It's sheer impossibility. So, stick to the more important ones that are actually more relatable and salient ngayong panahon. Like trauma, depression, so you can organize it properly and not take so much of all the topics na hindi naman talaga kailangan.
That's right. Okay, question time. Sabi ni Jack, Doc, ano pong usual reference nyo for abnormal psychology? Thank you for this meaningful sharing. I would apply these in my classes. Also, yun din yung tanong ni Willie Faustino. So, Doc Mark, any preferred text or ebook to use?
Okay. In UST nga, when we started, di ba sabi ko nga DSM kasi nga dati, no? But when I started, when I took over, tapos may textbook na, ang gamit ko, yung kay Hooley and Butcher, na abnormal psych. Pero, okay din yung kay Barlow, okay rin yung kay Nolan Sema, oo. Pero, yun. So, yun yung tatlo. Pero yung main reference namin is yung Hooley and Butcher. And then, it also helps talaga na reference din yung Synopsis of Psychiatry na ni Kaplan and Sadak. Kasi, ginagamit sa med school yon, di ba? So kung meron, kasi may mga doon merong TOP din doon, may therapy din doon. Tapos nandun nga yung table ng typical signs and symptoms. So you could use that as a reference. No need to buy the DSM din. There are, you could download naman din, or meron ako na-download na table of contents ng DSM, yung ganyan, yung actual outline lang ng laman. The ICD, downloadable. You could download that. Pero yun, ano lang naman yung pwede mga adjunct lang naman yung diagnostic criteria. Diba? So, kung talagang textbook, yun, ang main reference namin is Holy and Butcher.
Would you recommend that, Doc, also for those who are reviewing, for example, for the board exam?
For the board exams, review as many books. Kasi in the first place, item writers naman will not get a test back or will not get from a book. So, saka it's more on understanding kasi the definitions will be different. Saka situational din kasi talagang OBE na, di ba? So, situational. Kaya lang, ako kasi, sabi ko nga, very medium approach ko na minsan very kabisote. Okay? Kasi sabi ko, ito yung trick, no? Pag sinanay natin ang estudyante natin sa multiple choice, kasi sabi, di ba naririnig ko yun, total ang board exams, multiple choice. Hindi yung multiple choice ko lahat ng items ko. Hindi ako ganon. Kasi pag multiple choice, recognition yan. Sabihin, minsan kuhula lang sa choices. Lalo na kung hindi ka naman magaling sa distractor items mo, di ba? So yung pero kung recall, kaya di ba yung tayo, anong nga ba ang sagot dito? Yung ganyan. So, tingnan mo ng recall. Like, minsan syempre, mahilig ako sa modified true or false. Minsan, meron ako modified true or false na may multiple choice na kasama. Like, for example, the underlying term, if it's true, shade A. If it's false, anong dapat ipalit ron sa word na yun para maging tama yung statement? Diba? So una, kailangan nakaintindihan, you don't have to memorize the statement. Naintindihan mo, parang mali ito. Parang hindi ito sintomas. Kung hindi yan ang sintomas, kung false yan, merong item 2. So parang sa isang item, 2 points siya lalabas. So yung point 1, whether it's true or false. Tapos kapag true, shade A, tapos shade mo lang din doon na 2 sa baba, yung item. Kung false, dapat makorek mo yung item kung ano doon. So parang gano'n. Or again, although siyempre ayaw ng mga bagong educators sa yung rote learning, yung kabisa. Pero hindi mo pwedeng hindi kabisaduhin yung mga ibang mga simptomas, yung mga listings, di ba? Pero sabi ko, you don't need to memorize in toto kasi ako hindi rin naman. But the familiarity, kasi pag nandun ka na, anong nabasa ka, then you go back to your notes in your real practice. Nandun naman ang ASM or ICD mo. But in the board exams, pag nandun na yung choices at may immediate recall ka, di ba mas madali ka na makakapag rule out, rule in din doon. Hindi ito. Kung hindi yan, kasi parang yung ganon.
Okay. Sabi ni Joshua, kanina nag-message, sabi niya, grabe dire-diretso, anong kopya-kopya. Again, this is replayed. So, balikan nyo kung if you missed out, because we are pressed for time, because of course, our guests also have a lot of things to do. So, ito lang din yung time na meron kayo. Or kung gusto ninyo, mag-enroll kayo sa UST for graduate school para makita ninyo si Sir Mark, si Doc Mark, no? So, again, these are replayed. Afterwards, you can watch it over and over, share it to your friends if you would like. So, walang problema doon, no? So, yun. Anything else ba na meron pa tayo? Baka may questions pa tayo na miss? Monique? So, just
walk down memory lane yung mga students ni Sir.
Oo. As in, ang tawag nila Markanatics.
Markanatics?
Yeah.
Bakit ba nagsipakinig yung mga yan? Hindi naman yan magtuturo. Ano ba yun? Nakakaloka kayo. Pero salamat. Marami kayong data plan ba? Maraming oras. Pero salamat. Or review ba? Nagpa-review?
No, and I'm sure that, because your students are here, they would be the testament na you are a very good teacher in trying to impart your knowledge, facilitate, diba? Facilitate their learning. Oo, I think yun yung pinaka-testament nun. Nakakatuwa naman din kasi yun. Kasi you have your fans club. Your fans club. So yun. Okay, sige. Mukhang overtime na tayo kasi sabi ni Direk, uy, for something na. Pero before we let you go, Doc Mark, meron lang mga babanggitin si Miss Monique for some of our viewers.
Okay, so we're gonna see each other on July 23 for experimental psychology with Professor Junix de los Santos of University of Baguio at 2 o'clock as well. And then on July 24, group dynamics with your millennial psychologist, Professor Rian Portugues. And on the 25th, that's a Saturday. Medyo first time tayo nag-Saturday. This is with Dr. Michelle Valbuena of Siliman. And on the 28th, we're going to have social psychology, how to teach social psychology in partnership with the Social Psychology Division with Professor Diwa Quinones and Professor Darren Dumao. On the 29th is Introduction to Psychology with Professor Pat Datul Ramirez and Professor Ryan Torrejos. And on Friday, that's July 31, How to Virtually Teach Psychology the OBE Way by yours truly.
Hey, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Doc Mark, on behalf of bumubuo ng production bumubuo ng production team mula sa cameraman, sa light namin. Maraming salamat for sharing your
Thank
your
you
time.
so much.
No? Kasi alam namin, again, you're very busy, but again, we're very thankful that you were able to share this to our, hopefully magawa natin talaga to in a full-blown
Workshop or seminar.
Once everything, pag
That's
nakahanap na ng vaccine, no? Siguro para ma-sure na tayo. Ayun, maraming salamat, Doc Mark.
Welcome. Maraming salamat din sa opportunity. And again, anything for teaching SIG, di ba nga? Okay? Teaching tsaka LGBT SIG. Tsaka talagang utang ko na to, di ba? Talaga sa teaching SIG, dun pa lang sa face-to-face. Kaya hindi lang mag-fit talaga yung schedule. So, thank you very much, di ba? Last week, Pia Worsbach. Ngayon, Reyes ang kasama ko sa webinar, di ba? Talaga, level up, di ba? Talaga, di ba? Last week ang ka-webinar ko sa Soji and Mental Health, si Pia, ngayon naman si Doc Reyes. So, and of course, Monique, thank you very much. I enjoyed it's sobrang nervous ko nga, di ba? Sabi ko, pero having you as host and co-host, ako lightened the moment and yon. Maraming salamat.
Before we let you go, baka meron kang gustong i-plug, movies, teleserye, mga ganyan.
K-drama.
Wala naman. Siguro ayan, sa mga PAP members na natin na nakikinig, okay? I know it's the pandemic, pero we remind you to pay your membership dues, okay? And for our both PAP members, nominate people from the board because we are having our election in September. So I hope you would nominate. You could visit the PAP website for more information and the PAP Facebook page for more information. And maraming salamat. Stay safe, everybody. Okay, and take care of our mental health. Okay, self-care tayo lahat. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doc Mark. We'll see you again on the next time that we have this show at 2 p.m. Again, please follow our social media platforms. Of course, we're on Facebook at TeachPsychPAP, on Twitter at TeachPsychPAP, and also on YouTube we have Teaching Psychology SIGTV. You can reach us through our email at teachpsych.kp.sig@gmail.com. Maraming salamat. Good afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.